So this is going to be more of an off topic, I suppose. Partially post rationalization and just kicking around the idea that we're going to talk about conspiracy theories. More so, we're going to focus on how many years it took for people to finally have the wool taken off over their eyes and just how childish they were for honestly believing that human beings are just passive. All right, now, before we get started, hi, my name is Michael from Spades Consulting. Check out the site, stop by the YouTube channel occasionally, like if you like it, subscribe if you want to see more, and don't forget to check out the Substack occasionally. All right, that getting out of the way, let's talk about this. mm, Oh, what would be the term for it? Cognitive dissonance? Yeah. All right. So for many, many years, recently especially, because in the news there is more talk about the Epstein files, and the idea just popped back into my head again of Jonesy, Alex Jones, talking about the Creeper Island many, many, many years before, and the fact that, for instance, tons of people knew that island existed. They knew it existed. They kept their mouths shut. And when I forget who actually was going to try to run the story first, but some actual investigative journalism was happening. And unsurprisingly, media tried to bury that story. And it's just like, okay, all right, yep. The idea, I mean, Jonesy took tons of ridicule and hate over the years for his theories. There's just one slight issue, though. Now, let's tackle the media first. People look at Fox, CNN, all your common, everyday sources of news as if they are a public service. They are not. They are businesses trying to make money. Okay? There is no, like, there's a reason why so much weight is put on, I mean, given it's easy money to just hammer politics constantly instead of actually focusing on real problems and doing real journalism. It's easy to just throw goy slop into the boiler, all right, and keep the masses pacified by turning them against each other, okay? Fox would not be in business. CNN would not be in business. MSNBC would not be in business, including all the local affiliates. None of them would be in business if they actually started doing what you would imagine their job to be. They wouldn't have advertisers. They would have heat coming from every political source above board and below board coming to destabilize their operation and shut them down one, by hook or by crook. Okay? This also stems from a talk I had to go on about was it there's a short of one of the movies Rodney Dangerfield did where he essentially shits on a school professor, you know. Well, you forgot the bribes and payoffs. You got to pay off the mob. You got to pay off the union, and blah, 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 this is not real business. Meh, 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 meh. And it's just like one of the biggest issues with a lot of people is they are inculcated in the idea of human passivity and overall neutrality. Like a lot of people, and this is when it comes to conspiracy and otherwise, a lot of people honestly cannot imagine that there are people out there who have goals and plans and ideas to get things done that might not necessarily benefit them if those get done, like monopolizing a water supply, monopolizing the food supply, controlling the entire freight networks all across the country and globally. And people honestly have the like for the longest time people would instinctively just say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist," and write people off because of that. Here's the thing though. The label conspiracy theorist was a product of the three-letter agencies. They needed some kind of label that they could apply to people to devalue any information that they put out. All right. Now, when it comes to information in general, there's a surplus of it, and it's incredibly difficult to figure out what's real versus what's disinfo and what's just junk. Okay. It's gotten a lot harder. The info is out there. You have to spend a long time picking through it and finding the pieces, not necessarily that work, but the pieces that do actually go together, that do actually make sense. Most people would write off a lot of the conspiracy theories just because of that label. And these people legitimately neglect the fact that they are the product of a conspiracy. Like the amount of people who would act and who would preach and go on about how, oh my God, these people like Jonesy are crazy. And it's just like they're just crazy conspiracy theorists. And it's just like you do realize that your father was conspiring to bang your mom that night, right? And she was equally conspiring to bang your dad that night. You were born out of a conspiracy. It could have been more relaxed, it could have been more wholesome, but it likely wasn't. Okay. And God knows with Gen X and even quite a few of my generation, there were plenty of mistake babies, even though you're not allowed to, say it for what it is. But, mother and father got drunk one night at a party. Next thing you know, poof, into existence you came. And you got to think about it. You got to look at it for what it is. Like there are still people who will honestly ride the line of, "Oh my God, these people are just conspiracy theorists and they're unhinged wackos." And okay, okay. Think about when Walt Disney wanted to create Disney World. Now, if you're going to go out and look at some swampland, okay, do you want to go in the company truck, in the Walt Disney Company truck, or do you want to create a land acquisition company and separate it, have so many degrees of separation to it that people do not, instinctively link it to Walt Disney Corp and have their branding go look at the swampland? Literally every house that is built, anything that gets done is the product of a conspiracy. If Walt Disney just went out, of course, going back in time or unthawing him, if he were to just go out and start walking some of this fine swampland in Florida, immediately the prices are going to go up. Okay? The prices will double, triple. Actually, let me search real quick. How much did that cost? Because I know it was cheap. How much per acre did Walt Disney? How much per acre did he pay? Okay. Walt Disney initially paid as little as 80 to 100 per acre, but the price rose significantly to as high as 80,000 per acre once it became public that Disney was the buyer. Now, if he created a land acquisition company, he could have bought up all of the land for Disney World at 80 to 100 an acre. Okay? If you want to actually make legitimate money, all right, at least in that circumstance, but the bankers do it, politicians do it, everybody, everybody is in one form or another, directly or indirectly connected to some form of conspiracy. All right? It's literally the only way things get done. Because if you, again, just rolling with the Walt Disney idea, if you go out as Walt Disney and you start looking at land, immediately those prices are going to go up. The 80 to 100 per acre is a lot cheaper than 80 grand an acre. Now, the whole point of going out and getting swampland is cheap. Literally every golf course, country club, hotels, resorts, like all of this is done in low value swampland for the most part. Okay? Because it's cheap, and as long as you have enough degrees of separation, you can get the land cheap and then take the difference between having to pay that 80 grand an acre versus 80 an acre. Take that massive difference and turn it into developing the land so you can actually build something on it. Okay? Coming back to um coming back to the media again. Media being a business, the fact that some investigative reporter journalist tried to spill the beans on the Epstein Island, and the fact that it was buried almost immediately, that they tried like hell to bury that story entirely. Do you need more information than that to get it across in your head that things are connected, directly and indirectly? Things are connected. There are people who know things, and then there are people who don't want those things getting out. Okay? Literally, conspiracy is everywhere. Literally everywhere. So many people, and honestly, it comes down to gullibility. There are so many people who are gullible and they're passive and they honestly cannot imagine. They legitimately cannot imagine that a Bezos or a Musk would literally try to take over the country if they could. Okay? But if you look at it from their perspective, if you built these gigantic empires, Tesla could still go to zero, Amazon could still go to zero. All of the assets they own can still go to zero. But if they were the government, if they were the government, as long as you have people show up, put on dark uniforms, and pick up rifles, you're in charge. As long as a revolutionary, a counter revolution doesn't happen to try to stop it. But for the most part, you're in charge. If you're a Palantir and can literally read everybody's emails and every bit of data possible on them, especially if you're getting paid already to do it, um, you de facto have control over people. All right. And this is another part that people forget: influence. This ties into Dangerfield talking about, having to pay off the mob and the unions and everybody else in order to build whatever. Okay? The second is as soon as the majority of people, the second they get a little bit of influence, they immediately flip it for profit. Okay? They're not doing public works campaigns or projects. They're not, like back ages ago. One of the things that the mob used to do was, yeah, they might knock off a truck, but then they're in the neighborhood fucking donating loaves of bread or whatever the hell it is to the local population, and it kept the local population relatively loyal and quiet about how things actually ran. There are people who honestly believe, and honestly, a good chunk of it is the autism derived from technology. A good chunk of it is people's willful ignorance, people wanting to be blind, people wanting to be completely disconnected from how the world actually works. And you can't necessarily fault them for it because, I mean, to a certain extent, it's not exactly the nicest thing to conceptualize the fact that you live in a world where everybody is out for themselves and uh, it's just like with the EBT food stamps debacle. It's just like, okay, if you had your EBT food stamps cut off, who you gonna loot first? All right, you go after the middle-aged people who are coming out of a supermarket. They're probably going to be able to defend themselves. Who aren't? The old people. People don't necessarily want to believe they live in a world where some people who refuse to work a normal job would just go rob grandma of her meager grocery budget, all right, just because, man, my ABT. Okay? People don't want to believe that they live in that kind of a world, but I don't know if I don't know how many people have been paying attention or not, but America has been turning into, and most of the West, especially with the immigration surges, has been increasingly becoming a low trust society. It's a consequence of the fact that, maybe at one point, you could say that the overwhelming majority of people all kind of, had that general ignorance and operated more from a source of goodwill. But as time went on, everybody being out for themselves, everybody being self centered and trying to get their bag, all right, they all started turning on each other and burning each other every single opportunity where it made more sense to do it in the moment. Okay? We're a low trust society. We are literally, we may not be at Soviet Union levels of low trust, but we are definitely riding the line of it. Okay? Because look at it for what it is. Would your neighbor rat you out if you were, let's say, let's use a simple example. One thing that people were getting in trouble for down south was rainwater collection, and there were actually circumstances where people were running into legal problems because of their gardening, and that's even happened in New York State. Zoning, random bullshit. Low level politicians who haven't been paid enough money to just shut the fuck up and leave people alone. Those kind of people create that. Give me 1 second. Okay, and we are back. My apologies. Had to talk about Nepo babies and the chaos that they're wreaking on overall employment. Anyway, where were we? Let me see. Low-level politicians. Oh, yes. So, oh god, cutting straight to the chase. How much would the average person, how much would you trust your neighbors to not just go around ratting out every single thing you do to whatever political authority can make your life the most of a headache? Okay? And we're in a low trust society that nothing positive is going to change on that front. All right? Oh, all right. Let me recompose here for a second. All right. Literally every single part of life, whether it's personal or business, there are multiple conspiracies everywhere. Literally everywhere. Okay? It is a fundamental part of human existence. It is unavoidable, and it's honestly, it's just good business. Even though, at least in terms of that specific island, not necessarily great business, but it's a thing. You know, if you are going to, like, if you wanted to buy up a giant chunk of land, you don't want a giant brand name attached to it. You want a small name attached to it. You just want Bob Bobson to go buy a bunch of junky old swampland and conveniently resell it and, with a 5% markup instead of a 500% markup to the company that will end up actually doing something with it. All right. Don't be gullible. Okay. And this is incredibly important to get across. Do not fall for the myth of human passivity. Do not ever think, all right, that the people that you fucking bump shoulders with on a day to day basis, don't think for a second that they're not working on some kind of plan to either get rich at your most likely disbenefit, but people have motives. All right, you got to look at it for what it is. People have their own motives. They have things they're trying to do, good and bad. And regardless of whether you want to acknowledge it or not, and this is an important part about reading people too. If you want to be able to just look at somebody and be able to get a solid read on how they were in the past based on how they look now, how they speak now, how they act now, you gotta take the blinders off. All right, you gotta see things for what they are. All right, and this is one thing that I especially excel in. I remember the one day, just driving past a random or driving through a random Walmart parking lot, and sitting in the passenger seat, and literally looking at people. I can see their backstory. Okay, I could see most average people's backstory. And with the people I was with at the time, specifically, they're pointing to people, and I'm like, okay, she is da 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 da. And it's just like, yep, right, 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 right. And it's the thing. It's easy to read a lot of people's past because the majority of people, again, just like the people believing in general passivity and operating from the mindset that it's solipsistic, that people don't have their own motives, they're not trying to go out and do things, whatever those things might be. There are plenty of people who are just autopiloting through. And because they autopilot through, it's just like phases with teenagers. You can tell the phases that they've been through, and you can figure out the phase that they're in, and you can also relatively easily plot what their future looks like in the next 10, 20, 30, even 40 years. Okay. Just based on the fact that you know the phases that they've gone through, you know the phases yet to come, at least a reasonable amount of the phases yet to come that they will probably stumble into based on their past. And you can plot a pretty reasonable idea. Okay? Don't be gullible. The people that surround you, that you are next to on a day-to-day basis, friends, family, co-workers, doesn't matter, random strangers in public, everybody is trying to get somewhere. They're trying to do something, and they're not openly broadcasting for the most part. I mean, friends and family maybe, but the most successful operations, no matter what you're trying to do, the most successful operations succeeded because they were done in silent. You know, it's a perfect example just to close this out. If you, let's put yourself in the position of 18, 20-year-old, 20, let's say 24 to 26-year-old, you already had a few years, you didn't go to college, you didn't really have plans, you just worked a normal job. At that moment, let's say you had a semi-stable family background. At that moment, let's say you wanted to get into some field. Let's say you wanted to get into, I don't know, healthcare. It doesn't really matter. If you go out and tell your, friends and family that you're gonna go become a CNA or something, okay, by default, you've already set yourself back because now you have put the guarantee out there essentially. The second that you openly commit to it, most people will roll back in self-defeat. They'll self-destruct because the second that you put it out there that you're thinking about, doing something like that, whatever it may be, the second you put it out there, you set a target that you're not just doing, you're not just going to hit that target because you want to. You feel like you have to hit that target because now your parents think you're going to be a CNA or you're going to be this or you're going to be that. The second that you set that as the expectation, now it's an expectation that you have to meet, and that instantly, just that little thing alone, that instantly will bring people down just based on having to do it. It's not a choice anymore, it's an obligation. Okay? But when you keep all your cards close to the chest, it's a lot easier to get shit done because you're not worried about meeting those obligations. Okay? If nobody knows you're trying to create a business, if nobody knows you're trying to, do college or training or anything in particular, if nobody knows what you're up to, you don't have these additional hoops to jump through. Okay? And it's just like even when I was when I was learning software engineering, okay, now given I didn't go through traditional means, I self-study. I'm an autodidact. Autodidact. I just learn shit. Okay, it's just the way I am. I have a hard time settling for one thing or the other. At least in terms of what all I can do. I can't just be a software engineer. I can't just be this. I can't just be that. The variety is important to me. I didn't tell anybody. Okay, I didn't tell anybody that I was learning Java and C++ and C Sharp and Python and all the other languages and tools and all of the bullshit that comes with that. Now, given I don't have any paperwork to prove it, but I can still program, I can still develop, I can still set up server farms if I really wanted to. Um, Although I don't know if I can get Raspberry Pis. That is. One second. Let me see. Raspberry Pi 5. What is the latest one? Is it the 5s? As for a while back when I was doing the software engineering, yeah, it looks like the Pi 5 is the latest one, and Pico 2. Anyway, back when I was learning software engineering, Raspberry Pi popped up as an idea, and it's just like, yeah, it's a pretty solid idea, pretty cool idea. Could probably set up a little server farm full of Raspberry Pis, and it's just like, haha, yeah, good luck getting one. I did eventually get a hold of one, but it took, oh god, I want to say a year and a half, 2 years to actually be able to get one. And by that point, I was already on to my next things. But regardless, I told nobody, and I actually got it done. Now, if I went around telling everybody that, yeah, I'm going to be a software engineer, the next thing would be like, okay, well, you're going to college and paperwork and all this other shit. And honestly, this is one of the things that held back millennials and Gen Z for the large part, because especially once you jump through the hoops, if you do actually, tell everybody what you're working on next, if you tell everybody what you're working on next and you get the paperwork, like the college degrees, all that shit, and then you don't end up getting a job because the job market fucking tanked for software engineers, it looks real bad. I mean, yeah, you succeeded, you did something, but if there's no results, people don't really care. All right. We got off topic real quick. Anyway, I'm going to end it here. You guys have a good one. Once again, it's been Michael from Spades Consulting. Stop by the YouTube channel occasionally. I do occasionally put up new audio. Check out the Substack. Like, share, comment, subscribe, do all those things, and I will see you guys next time. You have a good one.